Okay, in this video, we will learn about a very important CSS property called box sizing. And it is very important property because it will determine how you write CSS into your project. Basically, it is very important. So, as you might have remembered, when we have learned about the width and the height property, right? We have mentioned that, okay, the width and the height property by default changes the width and the height of the content box. Okay. So if I go here in the documentation here, so by default, the CSS box model, the width and the height you assign to an element is applied only to the element's content box. Okay. If the element has any border or padding, not margin, to be honest, margin is calculated differently, but if the element has any border or padding, this is then added to the width and the height. Basically, the width and the height do not include the borders and the padding. Okay, to arrive at the size of the box that's rendered on the screen. Okay, this means that when you set width and the height, you have to adjust the value you give to allow for any border, padding, and like that might be added. Okay, border and the padding that might be added. Okay, so what does this mean? So basically, if you create a box, okay, if I go to the CSS W3 schools documentation here, I'll zoom in a little bit. So without the CSS box sizing property, by default, the width and the height of the element is calculated like this. So width plus padding plus border is the actual width of the element, and then height plus padding plus border is the actual height of the element. So in that way, what happens is that whenever you are setting some width and the height, for example, you set a width of 400 pixel. Then if you apply some padding of left and right, for example, of 20 pixel, then what will happen? The net size of that particular box will be 400 plus 20 for the left plus 20 for the right. So 440 pixel. And I will show it to you then. Okay, so if I go to the code editor here, and what I'll do, I'll get rid of this and get rid of these as well. And now what I'll do hash and then do box. Okay, I will create two divs, and another one I will do hash of alternate dash box. Okay, so we have two divs. One is the id of box, and another one has the id of alternate box. So inside of that, I will just select the all of the divs currently right now and do a height of 400 pixel and then do a width of 400 pixel. Okay, and then I will add some border of like say 10 pixel solid, and let's do something like salmon. Okay, and then what we can do, we can add some margin to that. So let's do like 20 pixels, something like that. Okay, and for the color, so background color, so let's do something like blue violet. Okay, hit save and let's see how that looks in our browser. So here is our two boxes, and I will open the DevTools and go to the computer tab. Now if you just select one of them, what will happen is that, as you can see, this is the content box is 400 by 400, and then we have some of the border. Okay, let's add some padding as well. Okay, so padding of, let's say, 20 pixel each side. Okay, now Let's see that. So as you can see here, we have a little bit of the round off of like 400 pixels by 400 pixel. Then we have the padding, and then we have the border, and then we have the margin. So let me just reduce the size a little bit. Let's do something like 200 pixel by 200 pixel. Okay, hit save, and now it should be a little bit of the refresh. So this dev tools are just setting up the, because we have set up the padding. So let's reduce the padding to 10 pixel. Okay, let's see, and reduce the border by let's say 5 pixel. Okay, hit save. Okay, now everything looks good. So because we had added a bunch of padding, so it was not showing up the proper results. Now it does. So as you can see, the content box is 200 by 200. Then we have the padding of 20 pixel. Then we have the border of 5 pixel. So if you calculate, so what will happen? So the net height of this element right now is 200 pixel plus 20 for top plus 5, so 25. Then once again for bottom we have 20, and then we have 5, so 20 20 40 5 5 10, so 50 pixels. So net height of this particular box is 250 pixels, and once again the width is 250 pixels as well. But now you want, like, hey, whatever the height and the width I am setting, I want the whole box to be that size, and I want everything to be calculated accordingly. So in that case, what happens? We have to use the box sizing property. So if I go inside of this code editor, and here what I can do, I can select the alternate box, and now if I select box sizing to border box, there are two values, border box and content box. The content box is set by default, so I can set border box and hit save. Now if I go to the browser, what will happen is that, as you can see, this box is now quite shrunk. And if I just set that, now what has happened, the content box size is now shrunk down from 200 pixel to 150 pixel height and the width. And then we have the 20 pixel of padding, and then we have the 5 pixel of border. So what does that mean? So I'll just zoom in a little bit. So what does that mean? This means that the total height for like of this particular element until the border, basically margin is not counted. Okay, so the total height is 150 pixel for the content box. Then we have 20 pixel of padding, so 20 20 40 and 5 5 10. So the total height is now 200 pixel, which we have set. Okay, which we have set here, like the 200 pixel height and the width. So basically, whenever you want to set the height and the width of the whole element, like until the border, then you want to use this box sizing property, and it is a very very important property, and I like to use that quite often. Like what I do usually, you don't have to write this, so I will reset everything. So what I'll do, I will just reset everything. So margin of 0, padding of 0, and then I do box sizing of border box for all of the elements, so that whenever I am setting some sort of height and the width, then the height and the width is set for the border box, not for the content box. Okay, so in that way what will happen, it is more predictable in my opinion. It is totally my opinion, you can use content box as well, but it is totally my opinion that in that way, whenever I am setting the height and the width, then I have a proper way to measure. Okay, so this div, this alternate box div will have the total height of 200 pixel and the width of 200 pixel as well. Okay, or whatever I am setting it to. So this is the border box property, and it is a very important property. And if I just go here, as you can see, nothing that much changed, but what happened is that the border box property also applied to the first box as well, and now the two boxes are in the same size. Okay, so this is the border box property. It is very important property, and you have to remember, whenever you are setting the height and the width of any element, if you want to set the height and the width of the content box, then you can use the box sizing of content box. But if you want to set the height and the width of the border box, then you have to set the box sizing to the border box. Okay, so this is the border box property in CSS. Very important.